Aparna. Thank you for joining me all the way from Houston, Texas this morning. It's afternoon my time in London, it's morning your time. Thank you very much for taking the time and being on the podcast with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I watched you in Indian Matchmaking that came out in 2020 during COVID. And then we saw you on season 2 in 2022. You've written a book since. There's been so many things. And if I can say, I've probably chased your agent for like a year. So I really don't do Zoom recording, but I really wanted to speak to you. So we finally made it happen.
Yes, so, in fact, you can be in London.
Well, yeah, I did ask her. I was like, is she going to be in London at some point? I think she said you might be in Spain, but not London. So we tried. Mm-hmm. So Leah, going back to Indian matchmaking, if I can say you were perhaps like the most dividing candidate, the most polarizing, people hated you, people loved you. And I think people understood you a bit more when you came on season 2. I've actually listened to your book. I've listened to your audiobook, and I think it really gave me a perspective for this interview. Can I start by asking what you've been up to since Indian Matchmaking, season 1, season 2, the book, what you've been up to in the past 2-3 years?
It's been a whirlwind. I am currently in late stage development of my own show. So there's actually kind of a saying, if you don't like how someone else does it, do it yourself. So I'm doing it myself. We'll see where it lands, whether it's with Netflix or Hulu or we don't know, maybe none of them, but I'm really excited. It's taken so many years to develop my own show, and I'll be behind the camera. I'll be in front of the camera. And I think it's just a full circle. We'll see in the next few months how that pans out. I'm writing my second book right now. It's fiction, actually. So someone read my book, my memoir. And in chapter 1, I talk about going around the world in a cruise ship. I was 20 years old. It's a program called Semester at Sea, and you literally circumnavigate the globe. And so they read the book. And they called me and they said, can you write us a fiction book about a young Indian woman who travels around the world on a cruise ship? And I was like, yeah, it sounds like IP off my first book. And they're like, exactly. And so I'm working on that now, and it's really fun. It's like a walk down memory lane of my own experiences, but it's fiction. So I get to make it spicier and more fun and more dramatic. Not that going around the world isn't dramatic, but I think fiction really gives it a new breath of fresh air. And then I'm also writing screenplays right now, rom-coms with the women who are South Asian as the protagonists. So I can see the own thread myself, because at first I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I going to all these different mediums? I've already done memoir. I've already been on a show, but why my own show? Why a fiction book? Why a screenplay? And then I realized it's all storytelling. It's all storytelling about South Asian women and South Asian women who are kind of like me. And I don't think we see them enough on our screens. And so if storytelling becomes my core, but I use different mediums, I am fine with that. I still think it's kind of the same vein. And so it's been really fun to explore each avenue as they come.
That's amazing. Can I say, is this a scoop? Are you telling people that you're going to have your own show? To what extent do people know? I certainly didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, we haven't sold it yet, so we'll see. But we are in final stages of talk. So literally we'll see. I don't know. I'm not a person who like really hides where I'm at in the process. So many people are like, talk about it once you do it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a big believer. I don't really believe in Nazar or like evil eye or like, I actually think that the more you speak about it, the more people want to help you. The way I found my director and my producer for the show was I was chatting with people, I think 3 years ago about this idea I had. And they're like, what are you working on? I'm like, I had this really cool idea. And a guy I met at a charity event was like, I have someone you need to meet. And I was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, for your show. And that is how I met my director. And she is well decorated, well known. I would have never met her otherwise. And had I not been chatting about it to everyone, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And same with my screenplay right now. It was written originally for the Hallmark Channel. They're not sure they want to move forward. They're kind of dilly-dallying, and that's fine. That's how this industry works. But I talked to people about it, and someone else is like, how about Lifetime? How about another channel? I know this person. I know that person. So I tell people, talk about everything you're working on. Talk about the things that haven't come to fruition yet. And if they fail, who cares? Like, honestly, would you even think about it twice if my show never came out? No. You'd be like, oh, she tried that. It didn't work. Like, people seem to think that like other people can control what's theirs. And that's just not Well, and in fact, they can just help you. And I've seen nothing but people try to help me really succeed at the ways that I want to story tell. And if I sat there quietly trying to make it work behind the scenes, well, I don't know anyone in this industry. Sure, I was on a camera, but like I don't know anyone except the producer on that show. And you know what I mean? So it's like if you want to grow and if you want to make things that are new and if you want to step out on a ledge, you need other people to help you. And so I encourage everyone and everyone also about my memoir. They're like, how could you write a memoir when you were 35 years old? And I was like, because I don't have it figured out. And I'm not trying to sit there and tell people in my memoir, you read it. I'm not trying to be like, I have it all figured out. Let me tell you how I succeeded in life. It's like, let me tell you about all the ways maybe I failed and then picked myself up and tried again and pivoted. Even if I didn't fail, I pivoted. I tried something new. And I think that's a really valid story and a really worthwhile story to be telling right now. I think so many women read memoirs of other women who are amazing and they're at the top of the mountain and they're looking back and they're telling you, young one, this is how I did it. And you're like, wow, I want to do it like that one day too. And I'm like, well, what about someone who's just in the middle of it? Who's just figuring
I
it out?
love this. I love this. And I think this is so nice for me to hear because I'm literally in the middle of a podcast which I launched like 2 years ago, but I work in banking full time and I'm still like trying to pivot and see like what comes out of it. And sometimes when I'm on, I don't know about you, but when you wrote your book, it perhaps, I know you wrote with someone, but it perhaps felt lonely because when you're writing the book, the world hasn't seen it. You're in it alone. It does feel somewhat of a lonely place at times. And you question it. I don't know about you, but I've self-doubted myself so many times and second guessed whether I should be doing this or not. So it's really refreshing, especially when, as a South Asian community, we talk about the nazar and not talking about it until it comes out. And here's a whole different perspective, which I love.
Yes, tell people what you want for this. Tell them if you want it to spin off into something. Tell them about, I need more sponsorships. Do you know anyone? Tell them, or don't even ask. Just be like, wow, I'm really looking for great sponsors. Let's say,
Mhm.
hypothetically, I don't know if you are. If you say it enough, someone's gonna be like, oh, I actually have someone for you. You'd be like, you never mentioned it before. They're like, well, you never mentioned what you were looking for. And so you can grow this, what you're creating, anything you're creating, more and amplify it and change its direction more with more people involved. And for me, that just makes sense.
Mhm.
I mean, to be fair, look, I also went on a show where, yes, I failed. Failed. I don't really think it's failing, but I didn't find someone, conveniently by the last episode of season 1 or 2. Neither did anyone else on that show. It doesn't make the story less valid. In fact, that is the story, that matchmaking continues when the camera turns off and finding the things we love in life happens after episode 8. And I think that's really important. And I think that women do this a lot where they don't want to talk about the things that they haven't already succeeded in. I've seen a lot of men be like, I'm working on this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, why can't women say that? Like, why not?
True. Very, very true. Well, Aparna, I only have you for an hour. So I really want to take you back to Indian matchmaking, the season 1, right?
Mm.
I know the story, and for viewers who are listening or watching this, please go back and listen to Aparna's audiobook. It's actually on Spotify. I listened to it on Spotify, actually. And you talk about the date story that started in LA and how you started applying to Indian matchmaking. So I won't make you go back to the story. But going back to Indian matchmaking, look, I did not like you. I actually didn't hate you. If anything, I found some of the things that you said funny, a bit shocking, but I didn't come out somehow similar to other viewers like hating you. If anything, I remember, so I'm based in London, but one of my best friends, we actually went to Portugal during the summer and we were swimming at sea talking about you. and,
Oh,
and we were talking about Indian matchmaking. I do want to hear from you. So now it's a thing. We know that Netflix, social media, I've had so many people from Netflix on this show. So I had Love is Blind UK, I had some of the cast members. And I don't know if you've watched Sweet Bobby. It's this South Asian lady who was catfished by her own female cousin for 9 years. So it's a
yes,
whole,
that.
yes. So she came on. And everyone's narrative pretty much been the same. They are not represented the way they think they should be on Netflix. Obviously, there's an intention to maybe has a villain in whatever program. It's almost understood these days. But yet, as a viewer, when you watch it, you end up hating one person. And you ended up being that person in season 1.
Mhm.
When you look back, do you remember any particular situations or anecdotes where you could have gone, well, I can sense the pressure here that the producers are putting on me. There's something wrong that I feel might come out of this. Did you question it at all?
Not in season one, but definitely in season two. In season one, it's interesting. Season one of any show, you don't know what you're getting into, especially with this one. I mean, it was kind of told to me that this would be a docu-series highlighting the best parts of my culture. The creator of the show is award-winning. This is not reality TV. Like, you get to work with this elite matchmaker. And I was like, oh, cool. What an opportunity. Who's going to watch a show anyway? And I never knew anybody in entertainment. I grew up in Dubai and London when I was a kid, but Houston most of my life. And I was a lawyer and I didn't know anyone in entertainment. I didn't have any clue of how these shows were made. I literally didn't even know what a producer or director did. I'm like, what's the difference between a producer and a director? Like, why, as a litigator in a courtroom, did I ever need to know the difference? And so for me, that first show, it is very raw. They didn't push me, not that I knew of. I think now in the second season, when I saw things happening, I was like, oh, I see where you're going with this and I don't like it. But definitely in the first season, I had no clue if that was happening or not. And I think that's really special about any first season of a show. If you look at the first season of Love is Blind or the first season of, I don't know, name anything, The Circle, it's just different. There's a rawness to it and a realness to it. And the people going on it have pretty pure intentions. Like, I think that season one cast really went on there hoping, most of us, to find someone, because this was maybe a show that was never going to air around the world, maybe a show that no one was ever going to see. It was maybe a docu-series, like documentary style. Like, really, what's that going to do? You know, will it go to Sundance? Maybe, but like, will it be on TV? No. I mean, we didn't even know the show was going on global Netflix till 2 weeks prior. We didn't. Maybe the people knew all along, the people making the show, but we were not told that this would air in 140 countries or whatever until literally 2 weeks prior. And so what I think is really interesting about these first seasons is now as I watch first seasons of shows, I'm like, oh, it's totally different. Like, it's a different kind of person. And I relate more to those kinds of people who kind of got like bamboozled. And I think like there's some honesty to it that it can never be replicated. And people say that to me all the time. They're like, yeah, we loved you on season 2, but we loved everybody on season 1 so much more. And we can't figure out why. And I'm like, because the stories felt a certain way when the person didn't know what was happening, when they weren't, you know, trying to come off as the villain or the princess or the teddy bear or the playboy, when they had no idea that that was even being painted of them. They were just living life. And, you know, what I do think is interesting, though, is how many hours they tape you for, and how they cut things. So my best friend called me when the show came out and she's like, I'm really mad at these people. And I was like, why? What happened? Like, at this point, we didn't know how bad it was. I mean, I'm talking like hours after the show came out. And she was like, I feel like they got the funny parts of you, that weird, dry sense of humor, and you say some off the cuff things, but then they like cut you out. And I'm like, what do you mean they cut me out? She's like, well, you're so warm and generous and kind. And there's always this context around what you're saying. And it makes so much sense once you explain it, but they didn't show any of that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. She's like, yeah, they like cut you out. And I was like, huh. And I heard that refrain so many times from people that know me. They're like, but you're so like warm. And they like cut out all your warmth. And I was like, yeah, like, I guess you're right. You know, it's hard to watch it and understand. Also, to be fair, I watched the show once in my life. Once.
That's
I
it.
watched it when it came out. Yeah, I've never seen it again. I saw season 2 once. I've read my book once. Like, I don't know. I have this thing where I'm like, oh, create it and then move on. Also, I think I would get really mad if I watched season 1 and 2 again, because I would be able to then like start analyzing things, and I'm just like, that's not productive. You know, take a deep breath, move on. You're still writing stories, you're still telling your story, and that will never end. So this isn't like the biggest moment of your life. This is barely the scratching of the surface of my life. And I think so many people put so much importance on like, oh, the whole world side. I'm like, the whole world's probably going to see my next show too. And probably my next show after that. I'm probably like, if you just believe that you're telling your story without counting numbers of people, but like the people that you actually reach, I think that's what's important. You know, people are like, no one's going to, you know, come to your social media and really see it. And they're right. Maybe 1% of the world who watched the show even came to my social media to see what I thought of things. Even less of a percent probably bought my book or listened to it on Spotify. So I could feel discouraged. And early on, maybe I did, that, you know, my story's not getting out, the real me is not getting out, you know, and there's an acceptance in that. I will never reach that number of people that we reached in July of 2020. Even if I make my new show, shows just don't have the numbers that they had in 2020. People were so bored. They were so angry. They were so isolated. They were consuming content like crazy. That's never going to happen the same way. No show is ever going to have those kinds of numbers again. And there's an acceptance I have to have of that. That like, maybe I'm always going to be swimming upriver. Maybe in 15 years, I'm 50 something years old, and I walk into a room and someone jabs her friend and she's like, oh, it's that girl from the show. We hated her. And I have to accept that. And that's going to be a lifelong acceptance because I'm going to be like, that person doesn't know me. Like, you always have it rise up in you, but you don't know me. And then you're like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah, you said at some point when you were talking to your best friend, you didn't know it was going to be this bad. 5 years later, when I hear you, obviously it's a lot easier now to have processed it, and I can sense the resilience, like the mental resilience that you've built over time. Back then, in that moment, how did it feel, if I may, to be someone of the most hated people when the show came out? Because I've just only started posting on TikTok. I'm originally from the island of Mauritius, and last week I posted on TikTok for the first time. It's a whole different game. Like on Instagram, you're very much shielded. People are professional. People are polite. On TikTok, people started picking on the fact that I speak. So I know you've been to Mauritius. I know that from your audiobook. So people back there speak Creole and French, and Creole is a bit of a slang. It's kind of broken French. And I speak Creole with an accent for having spoken French at home, and I speak English, obviously. And so people picked on the fact that I speak Creole with an accent, and it was almost like taken in a bad way. It's almost like speaking Hindi with an accent for having lived elsewhere for so many years. And it got to me. And at some point I was like, but if I want to use this as a distribution channel, I just have to put up with it. This is nothing compared to what you went through. Can you take us back to when it happened? How did you build your bubble around you to be able to come out of this?
not well. I think everyone wants me to say it was well. To be fair, now that I have the hindsight, yes, actually, maybe I'll give myself more credit. I'm very solutions oriented. And immediately I went into, I got to fix this. I got to fix this. And so I talked to Jessica Batten of Love is Blind. That show had just come out, season 1. She was the villain. She was Jessica, 34. I was Aparna, 34. And people were like, who should we kill first? Like on the internet, who do you hate more? Because the shows came out back to back. And she was like, just turn off your phone, go hide for 3 months. Don't talk to anyone. This will go away. And I was like, no. They basically lied and made up some story about me in episode 1, and I'm mad at them. And so I didn't say no. I spoke to every journalist that wanted to speak to me. And these journalists were so surprised. They were like, oh, you're the villain and you're going to speak to us? No woman villain ever speaks to us. They go hide for 3 months. And I was like, I'll speak to you all. And I spoke 8 hours a day. I did American press, Asia press, England press. I was waking up at, 6 o'clock in the morning to do London. I was waking up or going to bed at 11 p.m. because I was doing Korea and India and Japan. Like, I was doing the most. And for me, that was my solution. And I was speaking on social media. And it's interesting, though. You do have like constraints. You can't say whatever you want. Everything is kind of like floated through Netflix. Every time I, said anything, it's not through me. So I wasn't utterly honest. I'm not going to say it was like full candor, but I did the best I could, and I made that my solution. And yeah, of course I tried to sue them. Yeah, I screamed expletives at them. Yes, I absolutely despised them. Of course, it was their job. I rationally, as a lawyer, understood that later. I was like, okay, that's their job. But I still think it's a really crappy thing to do to people. And especially to not be upfront about it. At least if you go on a second season of a show or third season of a show, it's not, if that happens to you, I'm sorry. Like, you kind of knew it was coming. You watched the show. You said, I don't mind what they did in season 1. I'm going to roll the dice and see if I'm a good person or a bad person on season 2. But like for season 1s, I'm just like, come on, like do better in the world. I would never do that. And I will never do that on my show. It is unscripted and I'm not going to be doing the same practices, right? If you don't like how it's done, do it your way. So yeah, there are things I will never agree with the way that things were made and the way things were done. But I don't know. I think that if I found the solutions off the bat and the things that work simultaneously while freaking out, by the way, these things happen all at once, then I did the best I could in the moment. I always say do the best you can with the resources you have and the knowledge you have in that moment. And I did the best I could. And I did a pretty great job, to be fair. Like, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back as I look back on it. Like, I gave my all to telling my story and to having others amplify my voice in telling my story. I took the book deal right off the bat. I did all these crazy things while working 10 hours a day in the middle of the pandemic on Zoom court. Like, I was in court, like in my suit in this spot, and it was a lot, for months. I did this from like July to October or so until my family was like, this isn't safe anymore. Like, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, like, you're doing press 8 hours a day, social media 5 hours a day, working 10 hours a day. Like, you're going to get sick. And they were like, you have to trim the fat. And so I quit my job as a lawyer. And they're like, whoa, that's not quite what we meant. We thought you would like scale back on press or get someone to handle your social media. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write the book. I'm going to do the proposal. I don't have the time to write this proposal to even see if I can get a book deal. A proposal, by the way, for a memoir is extremely long. You're basically writing half the book before someone even says they're going to buy it. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to tell my story. And so they supported me quite quickly. They're like, yeah, okay, do whatever you want. You're a smart woman. If you want to take a year off of law and write this book, do it. And that was 5 years ago, and I never went back. I've never.
Amazing. And look, Aparna, hats off to you for getting your voice back, because having spoken to a few people on this show, like a few people who've been either on Netflix or in a reality show. I know this is more of a docu-series, but for having been somewhat on TV, so many people feel like they haven't got their voice back. So well done on getting your voice back, because I certainly felt like, having listened to the audiobook, having watched some of your interviews, I had a way different opinion of you, having watched the show and then way after. Can we talk about the woman who said when the Indian stock market crashed during COVID for 15 minutes, they had her interview, and that she works 25 hours instead of 24, that people are impatient? Sima Taparia, or Sima Auntie. Can we talk about her? I do think that as much as no one really found love on the show, when I think about you and your collaboration with Sima Auntie, it was somewhat of a still of a mismatch when it comes to matchmaking. How do you feel about the whole experience? And can you take us back to working with her? How was the whole thing for you?
I met her once in my life. I don't think people realize that. I met her once, well, for 2 days. So she came to my house for 2 days, for 2 hours each day. So I've met this woman for 4 hours in my entire life. My entire life in 2019. Like, I don't even remember her face. I don't know her. I didn't have a great experience with the 4 hours I was with her. As you read in my memoir, my mom was like, this lady's out of line in the way that she speaks about you. I do not want someone speaking about you. Leave this show now. And perhaps I should have listened to my mom, perhaps. But again, I did the thing I used to always do, which was people please. And I was like, don't be difficult, mom. Like, let's move forward with the show. They're apologizing. It's funny now. If that had happened to me, I would have walked. They're lucky they got me when they did, because if I knew now what I knew, if someone treated me like that or said anything about me to my mother like that, she said some terrible things to my mom about me, I would have just been like, forget you, lady. But I made it very clear that I would never, ever, ever see her again, to the point where on season 2, they were like, will you come back for the show? And I was like, yeah, if I never have to see your face again. And they're like, well, it's a show about her being the matchmaker. And I was like, your problem then. I'm not going back. I'm not meeting her. And they were like, what do you want us to do? And I was like, have my community find my match. I think that's a huge part of South Asian culture. If you need to come back on the show, you show the world that matchmakers work, our friends work, our aunties work, people in our community feel invested in our love journeys. Why don't you show the viewer that? And they're like, that's not how the show goes. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to be on it. And they were like, okay, that's how the show works now. And I was like, it sure does. It sure does. That's how it's going to work if I'm on season 2. And so it's interesting, if you see the first little event where Sima comes to a party, it looks like I'm at the party with her. But I was like, I'm going to go for the first hour. She can go for the second. I had a flight to Portugal with my friends. We were going on a trip. And I was like, my flight's at 9 p.m. I'll come from 6 to 7. I'll go straight to Newark Airport. And they were like, okay. And I was like, I will not see her face. And they were like, okay. And I was like, I'm not being petty. I'm just protecting my peace. And that's just not the way this is going to go. Like, and so I think something happened, like a camera broke or overheated or something. And so we were behind on taping, and she showed up for her call time. And they were like, Sima wants to say hi to you. Like they were like on their earpiece. I was like, no. And they were like, she's in the car. And I was like, have her circle the block. It's not my problem. And they were like, and I was like, I will walk off this set if I see her face. I told you that. And they're like, fine. And so I never saw her face. So like that, it looks like we're at the same party, but I was gone by the time she walked up those stairs. I went down the back stairs, she went up the front. And a lot of people are like, you could have said hi or whatever. Not my friends, not my family, but like the producers, they're like, you could have just said hi. And I was like, no, no, my boundaries are that I allow people into my life that treat me well and want my best interest. And I don't think that was the case there. And so I don't want to be a part of it. And I think that's a big lesson for other women to learn. And I think it's funny that they like glossed over it and no one really understood that. But I was like, I still protected my peace. They can make it look like whatever they wanted. But in the end, I got on that plane. I have since 2019, April of 2019. I've never seen that woman, never heard her voice. I've never dealt with her. And I think that was good for me. I think obviously other people on the show loved her. I even saw people kneeling at her feet or touching her feet or whatever in that episode. I'm like, okay, if that's the way you feel, I respect that. I respect the way each person feels about the relationships they have in their life. But I also have to, more than anything, respect the way I feel. And I'm proud of myself for doing that. I'm proud of myself for setting those conditions. It was certainly not who I was on season one. But that's like my example of when you have more information, you make different choices. And maybe now I would make the choice to not go on a season. You never know, right? But I did the best I could in that moment.
Everyone on the show actually had a list of criteria, right? Everyone went through their own list, and it somehow felt endless because Netflix made it funny and kept adding one more criteria to the other. Did you ever question this, or did you have any people questioning why was it just you who ended up having an issue with her? Because the way I saw the show, she also picked on other people, right? It was not just you. I can't remember some of the cast members in India, but some of them had dated. There was this one candidate who had seen like 150 women, and she yet didn't call him out for being picky or for having really high standards. You certainly got called out for having high standards. And if I may, you got called picky, you got called petty, stubborn was a big one that came out. Did any of the cast members question that, Aparna, why is it just you having an issue with Sima Auntie and not us? Or maybe they talked about it behind the scenes.
No, they fully agreed with me. I mean, they fully agreed with me. They may have treated her differently or edited it differently. But I think everyone who met her understood that that was just not it. And if they wanted to treat her a certain way, that was on them. But I don't know. I don't think anyone on the show questioned. They actually had my back. I mean, I was friends with all the men that I went on dates, and not all of them. There were 7 men total, and I stayed in touch with about 3 or 4 of them. But they were sticking up for me. They were posting all over Instagram. I mean, they had small followings at the time. Nobody was really going to check on them, but anything that they could say in my defense, they would. And I think that spoke volumes about the way that I respected them and treated them. After a man was flown to my house and the cameras turned off, I always took them to a meal. I always treated them to dinner. I always spent time with them. I said, thank you for flying all the way here. Thank you for, taking time out of your life to meet me and come to my front door. And I think that's called treating people with kindness. Maybe I wouldn't date those men. Maybe they wouldn't date me, but that didn't mean that I didn't appreciate them and respect them and like them as a human. Maybe not as my husband, but as a human. And so I think that goes a long way to the way that people viewed me after the show. The ones who went on dates with me knew who I was. The other people, I mean, to be fair, I never knew them, right? Like we never met the other people on the show. That's why this show is also so different. We were all very siloed. I never knew anyone except the men I went on dates with. The other women only knew the people they went on dates with. So it's not like I was friends with the women. On Love is Blind, it's so sweet. The women have such a beautiful friendship, even the men. And it's because they live together in that apartment and they bond and they go through the experience together. I didn't go through the experience with anyone. I was very alone, very isolated. And that was by design on the show. They did not want us to know each other. In fact, it was much more difficult for them on season 2 when we did all know each other and we were all comparing notes and calling each other and texting each other. They were like, this isn't cool, guys. And we were like, whatever, like your problem, not mine. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see the way that I was treated by the people that I treated well. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us, that we should always treat people the way we want to be treated. And later, guess what? You will be treated that way. And they were so supportive and so kind and so loving. I couldn't have asked for anything else.
Oh, that's amazing. Look, Aparna, since the show, you've been unabashedly yourself, unapologetic. I know Be Like Aparna started trending because you started speaking out and you started calling, if I can say, the double standards within the South Asian community.
Mhm.
What would be your message to women today? I think you perhaps in your late 30s now, and if I may ask, are you dating? Are you single, or are you still progressing within the journey of love? But as part of that question, us women, whenever we get to, whether that's like your early 30s or even in our late 20s up to our 30s, we get called petty, picky, stubborn for not wanting to settle. What would be your message to, because I certainly have friends going for this right now, friends who we are comparing notes, like who's saying what, who's dating who. And
Mhm.
you get called out by the Indian aunties for being too picky, too educated, not wanting to settle for less.
I think you should hold that like a badge of honor then. You don't want to settle for less. You have to sit at a dining room table or on a couch with this person for the rest of your life. Your kids will come and go. It's so sad to think, but our parents are going to go. Like, this is it. And I say that on season one. I said, I'm picking my family when I'm picking my husband. I will not be able to pick my kids. So many people's parents and their kids, they don't get along. Like, you birth a kid and you can't control its personality or the way that you mesh with it. You have parents, you can't control their personalities and the way you relate to them. You have a sibling, you might love them or hate them, right? It's all a gamble. The only non gamble is your partner. And I think you should take that very seriously in life. Like, I'm seeing my friends go through their first divorces now, and I'm like, okay. Like, and there's a joke with women and men, even men. Like, I went on a date with someone recently, and he's like, all my friends joke that I just skipped my first marriage.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, would you have preferred to have had that experience? And he's like, no, I find myself very lucky. And I was like, me too. I find myself very lucky that I didn't start a life with someone and then see it go down the drain because of many reasons. Not that I picked wrong, but that I grew maybe or evolved or changed or they grew and changed and evolved. Like right now, I know who I am and the partner that I pick will know who he is. And I'm going to have to accept him that way. Like we're much older. Like there's a lot more acceptance I'm going to have than my friends who got married at 25, because when they married that person, they were both all figuring out life together, right? So many of them grew together. If you get married very young, you often like get the same interests and you kind of decide how many kids you want to get. All those things get decided together. So there is something I would say to like older people who are dating. It's that like you have to really keep in your mind that acceptance is going to be the thing that comes above all else, because we're not going to be able to change these people. They are who they are at this point. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't go on the third or fourth or fifth or sixth date with them. You can't wait for them to change. They're not going to change. Maybe when you're younger, you have a hope. But if you have the hope in your 30s or even your 40 or whatever age after your early 20s, it's not going to work with that person. Or if it does, it's going to work, but with a lot of friction. So yeah, these are just things I think about myself when I meet someone. I'm like, okay, this is who you are. I'm going to have to accept that about you. Like, can I do that? Can I not? So it's a different way of thinking as you get older. But when aunties say something, I am, to be fair, no auntie has said anything to me since I was 34, because I kind of there's some weird gifts I got from the show. One of them is that like no auntie believes that I need to marry anyone now. They're like, oh, you're so famous, you're so this, you're so accomplished, like you'll find the right man, the perfect guy's out there. It's like funny to hear. You're like, timeline's ticking. You should be like chiding me the way you're chiding the other women. But now I'm almost taken myself out of their understanding. So they just don't understand where I fit in their traditional idea of a man needing a woman or a wife needing a husband. And so they're just like, we're just so proud of you. And I'm like, wow, I just got away with murder on this one. Like, literally, no one has spoken a word of me about having to get married since the first show came out. And I feel really bad. I see other people really get like in it with aunties or like just get those sly comments or whatever. And I just haven't gotten them. And I don't think they're ever going to give them to me. For me, they praise me, and I know that they don't do that. That's different than being like, oh, you're in your 30s, we've given up on you. For me, they're like so complimentary and like, oh my God, you've done so much. We're so proud of you. And I'm like, man, I got away with murder on this one. Like that is 99.99% not going to happen to anyone else. And so I take it as a breath of fresh air. And it's been a really pleasant experience to have actually these aunties come up to me and tell me how proud they are of the woman I am and the woman I showed up to be. And I think that they want that themselves secretly or not so secretly, and they want it for their daughters, especially the ones that can now see it. They're like, wait, we want our daughters to be pickier. Like, we want, especially if their daughters are divorced or something, or have had bad relationships, they're like, we want them to be pickier. Can you talk to them? And I'm like, so this is where we're at now. Society progresses though. We are different than the people we were in 2020. Aunties are different than the aunties they were in 2020. They've seen more of the world. They've seen the changes. They've seen so much. And I think that what also happened with me was maybe it was the first time people had seen a woman of color, a South Asian woman, and a full South Asian cast be that person. And so it was difficult for them. And now it's just so much easier. They always say like you walk so the next one could run. Um, yeah, I don't know. I hope the aunties that I know, I hope and I see that they are much more I don't know, pro women's liberation or choice or empowerment or a cautiousness about picking what's right for them and knowing what they want in a partner. There's so much more for that than they ever have been.
And I think grandmas are evolving too. Like, I have a friend who's been in a relationship for 5 years, and unfortunately they broke up. And her dad actually said to her, like, she's South Asian, and and the guy was white Caucasian, and the dad said, "I'm afraid like you've lost 5 years of your life." And meanwhile, the grandma was like, "No, you know what? You're in your early 30s. Go travel, see the world. You're independent. You can stand on your own feet." And I was like, this is amazing. You've got the dad and the grandma basically talking against each other, and the grandma siding the granddaughter. And I was like, this is so refreshing.
And that is a big change that's happened. These women, even the older ones, are looking at us and being like, wait, I would have loved that.
I don't know how comfortable you are talking about it, if there are bits you don't want to talk about, but how's dating these days in like your mid to late 30s? How are you approaching dating? And just paraphrasing what Sima auntie and you exchanged at the time when you said you wanted someone who was laid back, not the funniest guy in the room, and she said, well, he should just be jolly, which was a word that I don't think we use very often. Certainly not in England. I don't know about in the US.
Definitely not.
Okay. Has the criteria changed since? How's dating these days?
I still want someone laid back. And, I'm not the most laid back person, if that's not obvious. Not in a bad way. I just like and dislike certain things. And I think that was very obvious. And I wish also that more women just said what they liked and didn't like in the world. Vulture did a whole article on me right after the show came out in season 1. And I feel so bad for the intern or whoever that was, but they had to watch the entire show, make a list of the things I don't like. And I was like, I stand by those. But I also, if you went through and it wasn't edited, you would have heard all the things I do like. I very easily tell people, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like. And I don't know why women don't do that, because men do it all the time. And so I think it's really interesting to see dating now as what I want. Again, like I said earlier, it's really about acceptance of the person. So I still do think having someone more laid back would be great for me, but I'm kind of leaving it on a person to person basis. And, I can't be on the apps anymore. I tried it briefly after season 1 and it was a really negative experience. It's really interesting to have like worldwide being known and then being on the apps and then having people date you for different reasons, none of them good. And so now I just trust in my friends and my family and strangers. What I said about work? I tell people now, do you know anyone? And
oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, because I trust them if they know them. I can't meet someone randomly now. I have to meet them through a person. And that person has to then, the guy I'm going on a date with has to be vetted. Someone has to really know him for me to even see him for coffee. Otherwise, I don't feel safe. And I don't feel like I know what I'm walking into. And so there's a lot of security around the way that I date now. Do I date as much as a woman who's on Hinge? Like, no. One of my friends is recently on Hinge and she went on 7 dates in 6 days. And I was like, well, I do not go on that many dates, but the dates I do go on are hand selected by people I trust. And so it is weird. I am somewhat still being match made in this world. In an ironic twist of fate, that is likely how I'm going to meet someone now. And I'm okay with it. I don't mind the slower pace. I actually think I have so much going on in my life that it's it's nice to go at the slower pace and the more intentional pace. And it's nice to have that community around me. I think back in the day, people had that, like men were accountable to the person that set them up. And I think even if I wasn't known from the show around the world by millions of people, I would still actually prefer that method as a woman in her 30s. Or even younger, any age, actually, to just be like, oh, do you know this person? Okay, what's he like? What's his family like? Has he dated anyone in the past? What do we think about where he's at in his career? Is that really a focus for him now? Like, I don't take their whatever they say to heart, but I take it as like a data point. Now, if he tells me something different, I'm going to trust him. Like if he's like, hey, I'm taking a step back from work, I really want to focus on my profession, on my personal life, then I'll be like, okay, well, in my head, I'll be like, oh, they said you worked all the time. But man, if you're sitting here on the date telling me that this is something that you're prioritizing in your personal life now, then I'm going to trust you. So there's a way to go about it. Take everything as face value when someone else says that, and to trust the person that you're meeting more than anything anyone says about them. But yeah, that's how dating is going right now. And I've met some amazing people. None of them are a fit at this time, but we'll see.
Okay, and do you feel like the men who've watched the show, they've actually been nice for understanding you differently and seeing you in the right limelight of who you are now? Or do you think some men are still somehow holding on to the perception of you that came out from the show?
If they're on a date with me, they're certainly not holding on to the perception.
Sure.
I think also a lot of men watch the show maybe in 2020 and don't remember it. I mean, I don't think they really remember it. And men I found much more in the moment. Like, who are you now? Do I like the way you look now? Like, do I like the way that you make me feel? Do you like, I don't know. I feel like men on first dates are very much about like what's in front of them. So yeah, I don't think they would be on that date if they had a feeling about me from a show. So I guess I cut those people out before I ever have to even meet them.
Right. And do you believe in it should be about 60 to 70% of compromising? If you've got that in a person, that should be it. You should proceed as per the catchphrase.
How will you know it's 60 to 70%?
Based on your
You'll never,
compatibility, apparently.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think you'll ever know what your compatibility is with a person because we all change. If you would have dated me 3 years ago, maybe you match 60% of me then, but now you match 40%. Like I'm also going to have to change and you're going to change. And so I think that the people we are, hopefully when you're in a partnership, you're changing with the person, you're evolving with them, you're on the same page, you're moving more together in life than apart. Obviously, apart is where we see things like bad breakups after 5 years or divorces. But the hope is that once you do commit to a partner, you commit to grow together. But I still think that we're all going to change so much that we can't ever even have a list. Like I don't even think that's possible. Do you get along with them when you meet them, and do you really commit to them? Will you choose them every single day? I asked one of my friends, she's been married since we were young, like 23. She got married 24, and I said, how are you guys so happy? 3 kids, like whatever. And she was like, I pick my husband every day and he picks me over ourselves. I will do things every day that make my husband's day better. And he will do things for me every day that make my day better, even if it's at the detriment to us, like personally. And that's how we pick each other every day. And that's how we remain committed. And that's why we have this like very warm relationship and this intimacy and this love, because we are constantly making that decision. And I was like,
love this.
lady, you've got a lot to teach all of us.
Love this. Well, Aparna, for the last section of the podcast, speaking of picking your husband every day, can you give me the context behind some of the zesty lines you had on the show? I actually quoted 3 of them. The first one, which was, do we have to see our husbands every day? What was that about?
Like, do we though? I mean, it was about my sister and this other friend of mine who at the time they are with their husbands 24/7. Like we'll go to like a dinner party and they'll sit next to their husband. I'm like, you sit next to him every day. Like, why? You're here with me and your friends. Like, go talk to your friends. Or if they go anywhere, they go with their husband. Or if they go on any trip, it's with their husband. And I'm like, I like my girlfriend trips. I like my solo trips. I like going to a party and splitting up from my partner and then coming back together at the end of the night and being like, oh, that was such a fun night. Let's go home together. Like, I just don't need that. And I don't think that a lot of women need that. I think it's actually, if you need that, I actually have some questions for you about your codependency on your partner. But again, that's just me. Some people really love spending that much time with their partner. And we all have those friends, by the way. Everything is with their partner. And you're like, not for me.
Okay.
Not for me. I don't want to see my husband all the time.
Okay, that's fair. The second one, do not make me sit on the beach for longer than 3 hours. And I'm concerned if you have to relax for 10 days.
Yeah. And I say this in the show, what's so crazy in your life that you have to relax for 10 days? Like, my life is pretty relaxing. Like, I'm good. Like, if I'm going to sit in the town I live in, I can go to bed early. I can wake up early. I can work out. Like, I can spend time with my friends and family. Like, what are you so stressed out about in your day-to-day life that you have to go escape by sitting like a potato on a beach and staring? I don't know what you're doing even. Like, why? Like, I want to go to Japan, and I don't want to go to Turks and Caicos. I like this summer I'm planning a trip to Mongolia. Like, I want to go to Mongolia. I don't want to go to the Bahamas. Like, I just think that I have so many opportunities in my life to take care of myself in my life that when I go see the world, I want to see the world. Like, when I'm in Egypt, I want to be at the foot of the pyramids like I was. And then my other friends were like, oh, when we went to Egypt, we like sat at the hotel and chilled by the pool. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to Egypt and chill by the pool. Like, I'm just not going to do it. And so it's just a preference. Again, preferences. Some people like to spend 1,000,000 hours with their husband every day. Some people want to go sit on a beach. I just think that for my partner, I wouldn't be with a partner that thinks that they have to escape the life they live to go be idle somewhere else, as if they can't find idleness and peace in their daily life. That's worrisome to me as a person who can find it in every part of my life. And I enjoy my life at home. And if they don't, that tells me a lot about who they are also.
Very clear to me. And then the last one. How's your mom, by the way? I haven't asked.
Yeah, she's doing well. Our parents are getting older. It's sad. I'm like, oh no.
I know. I hear you. My parents are back home as well, and I travel from time to time to see them, but I hear you. That's a whole different topic, but
Yeah.
I do miss them too. Your mom calling Trini a loser. That was, I think, the can I say the most dividing line maybe of the whole show? Maybe that was it.
Yeah, and you were so smart. They put it in episode 1. So if you were making a show and you want the audience to feel a certain way and not even know why they feel a certain way about a character, and then carry that thread through for the next 5 episodes, you'll put the most shocking thing in the beginning, and then you'll create the story from there. Because how could I ever redeem myself from that point? If they would have showed you me being cute at goat yoga first and then put the Srini line at the end of the show, you would have been like, oh, I kind of like her. Like, maybe her mom didn't really mean that. But it's interesting. It's interesting the way that we create stories. Also, I'm very honest about it in my book up to a certain point. Again, it's interesting. I'm a lawyer. I understand about defamation and being sued and stuff like that. This is America that I live in. I couldn't tell you the real Srini story even in the book. I tried. If you read it really carefully in the book, you can kind of see where I'm going with it, and it's not good for Srini. And my mom was very rightful in calling him a loser for the things that he did, but it was certainly not because he had a podcast or did something like different for work. Oh, we don't really care. Honestly, I have my own money. Like, I'm a lawyer. Like, I don't need anyone else's money. I'm good. I think that's interesting about women nowadays too, that we have our own money. My husband can be a podcaster, and I'll be like, that's fine. I love him. Like, we'll figure it out. That could actually take off. Actually, one day he could be supporting us. Like, right now, I'll hold the baton and he'll grow that. And then later, when his is big, I'll step back from my career a little bit. Like, that's what a relationship is nowadays, because women are such high earners themselves. You're in banking, you know that. But yeah, it's interesting. I stand by what my mom said. Srini was a loser. He did some really terrible things. If anyone did that to my friend, or my child, I don't have a child, but I would be like, damn, that kid's a loser. And that's why I almost left the show, because they gave me such a bad match the first time that my mom's like, who are these people? If this is who they're picking for you, this kind of disrespect being given to you by your dates, not alone. Let's forget the matchmaker. That was a disrespect too, that I talk about in my book, about what she said about me to my mom. But if they're giving you these kinds of men, why are you here? And that was the point. And I was like, you're right. And so we actually had a long conversation where I told Sima all the things that she had done wrong by setting me up with that man and all that he had done, and they cut it all out. And they left my mom saying he's a loser. And I was like, that's interesting, because we had a half an hour talk about all the things that you did wrong by setting me up with this man. And then no one in the world ever got to hear about any of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting editing decision.
100%. And I think because people saw this side of you from the show, I would actually encourage people to go and listen to the audiobook and read the book, because I felt I had a whole different perspective. And I'm not asking the question because I've listened to your part that led up to your mom calling him a loser, which I thought was really helpful. And honestly, I think my mom would probably do too. I don't get to hear his side of the story, but we've somehow been given that side of the story, and then I've listened to yours. I think my mom would probably say the same thing.